Just a quick announcement before we begin, I'm going to be scaling back a bit in terms of video output. Rather than aiming for one review a week, I'll do one review every 2 weeks, mostly to give myself more time to work on them and other projects. I often feel like I'm not doing my best work, and I want to change that by giving myself more hours to work on a video. Anyhow, that's all. Let's get on with today's video. January is a dreadful month, especially when it comes to video game releases, as of course all the big name titles will have dropped before Christmas, with the embarrassments being farted out afterwards to avoid having to compete. I can't say I blame any publisher or developer for deciding to avoid that window though. After all, most of us only have so much money these days, and games can be very expensive, but for me the worst part about this month is needing to find content for this Go Nowhere series. Last week my High on Life and Skywalker videos dropped, and both lent more towards being negative, but I won't spoil anything if you haven't already seen them, but they both made me want to be a bit more cheery this time around. In September of 2022, I released a video talking about Fallout New Vegas and why I personally considered it to be the best of the modern Fallout titles in spite of the incompetence of the publisher Bethesda. I will forever be impressed by Obsidian Entertainment for being able to produce such a good RPG whilst working with shoddy assets and a broken engine, and again I have to say, they didn't succeed because of Bethesda, they did so in spite of Bethesda. Of course we all know by now that Fallout New Vegas was running on the same engine as a previous Fallout game that was developed entirely by Bethesda, using Bethesda assets and systems which had previously been used to make Fallout 3. Fallout 3 was my very first time playing a Bethesda title, and it was the game that really made me interested in the concept of the RPG, as up until that point I'd been more into Little Big Planet and the Resistance games. As I've been playing Fallout 3 between projects for the past few weeks and now have a huge folder of footage to play with, I figured it was time to properly dive in and have a look at the game. I will try to do more relevant titles as we go forwards, I promise. Well, newer titles at least. Anyway, let's talk about Fallout 3, shall we?
It's all over, but the cry, and nobody's crying but me.
Taking place in 2277, Fallout 3 follows the lone wanderer on their quest to find their missing father, which later transitions into them having to save the wasteland as a whole, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. The game begins in Vault 101. We create our character as we play through various key points in our lives, from our first steps to our annoying school exams, and eventually we're forced to flee the vault to look for our father who left the night before. Whilst this segment does make replaying the game feel rather drawn out at the beginning, I do rather enjoy it, as it is an interesting and rather immersive way of creating our character. Once we fight our way through the vault, we're met with the bleak beauty of the capital wasteland, and this is where the game opens up. You can, if you choose to, immediately follow the marker and seek out your dear old dad, but you don't have to. If you like, you can just walk 100 miles in any random direction and see what adventure you stumble into. The game is, of course, an open world, and as far as open worlds go, it's quite a good one. The depressing atmosphere of the capital wasteland and subdued colour palette are used to great effect, and you'll likely spend most of the journey alone, which adds to the sense of isolation, which also works in the game's favour. There is a lot of melancholic joy to be had exploring the ruins of this world, even if the game's visuals haven't exactly aged well. I left a bottle of milk out for a few days once and it aged better than these graphics have, and even back in the day they were hardly anything to write home about. The game was released back in 2008, the same year as games like Dead Space, Gears of War and GTA 4, and obviously graphics back then still had a ways to go, but even by the standards of the time, Fallout 3 didn't look good. Characters look off-putting and stiff, and plenty of objects in the environment are lacking in detail, and that's when their textures remember to appear at all, as the game has a few visual bugs here and there. Technically speaking, the game is a rough and clunky mess that can barely hold itself together. Even I, as a fan, will admit that the game has some serious mechanical problems and is prone to frame rate drops and crashes, and you'll encounter your fair share of bugs. One, for instance, that I encountered was in the Vault-Tec HQ building. The security robots that I had destroyed, in some cases I blew off all their limbs, I found standing around in deactivated poses, some in mid-air due to a lack of limbs, after I messed with the terminals that were used to shut them down, because the game apparently was only prepared for one of the two outcomes, either you destroy the robots or shut them down, not both. This area on the map, the Regulators HQ, is difficult to locate if you're using a custom waypoint, because said waypoint will appear on your compass leading you directly south, regardless of where you are in relation to the place, so you'll need to place a custom marker as close to the location as you can on the map, but not on it. Sometimes the sound effects will lag behind when firing guns, quite often the character's lips will just stop moving whilst you're talking to them, the AI buggers up constantly, like if you follow your dad across the wasteland, he'll keep getting turned around because his pathfinding shat itself. Honestly, there are so many issues in this game and we've only just scratched the surface when it comes to all the technical flaws. I mentioned already already that the graphics are shit, there is quite a lot of pop-in because the engine cannot render distant objects very well, and characters will sometimes jerk between their animations as you speak to them. Sometimes the audio for the dialogue will just forget to play. I got this the most with this dude here who takes you to one of the main DLCs, and on occasion other characters will suffer from the same thing. The gunplay is inelegant and janky. You cannot iron sight aim at all, so for your best chance of hitting something at a distance you'll need a scoped weapon, which are very rare. You do have VATS, that system which helps with targeting and shooting by pausing the action so you can line up your next few moves, which then fire off automatically, but you'll need to keep in mind that when using it, it will cause your weapons to degrade 4 times as fast. Oh yeah, the game has equipment durability and it's a pain in the cunt. Most guns degrade quickly, and if you're using VATS a lot due to fast moving enemies or for whatever reason, then your shiny assault rifle will wind up a pile of dust within a few minutes. You cannot repair any gun with anything except the exact same type of gun, otherwise you need to pay merchants to do it for you. Armour is a tad less of a pain, but only in the sense that some suits are basically identical anyway and can be repaired with one another. For example, I can repair my Riley's Rangers battle armour with Talon Company combat armour, but it's only because they're both combat armour. They just have different paint jobs. But plenty of armour still requires an exact copy to initiate repairs, and there aren't any items that heal weapon condition. Well, one DLC introduces one, but the fact that it's a DLC item is annoying as fuck. Worse still, unless you have 100% repair skill, you cannot fully repair gear, so if you neglect the skill, you can find yourself facing down angry super mutants with a gun that's held together with chewing gum and twine. With all of this being said, you can be forgiven for thinking that I do not like the game and for deciding that the game isn't for you. I can't blame that, I said as much in my Fallout New Vegas video. But here is where I arrive in my shiny power armor, swish kebab in hand, to tell you that I actually think that Fallout 3 is, at its core, a really good game. The world we find ourselves in is vast, offering hours of exploration with dozens of quests to complete and cool pieces of treasure to find and interesting enemies to encounter and do battle with. It's been just over 14 years since Fallout 3 first came out, and I still discover new things whilst playing. I already played this game so many times that at one point I could recite the entire plot and many of the side quests to you from memory if you asked me. The main plot is serviceable, ultimately revolving around providing clean drinking water to the wasteland, which is an understandable objective, and if that's all you want the game to be, then yeah, that's all it can be. But if you walk off the beaten path, you'll find all sorts of interesting things. Head west from the vault and you'll eventually come across a town being terrorised by a gang. Only the gang are reformed cannibals who are now basically vampires, and completing their quests gets you the plans to build your own flaming sword. Go north and you'll find a street covered in landmines and guarded by an angry old sniper. Head south and you'll find a ruined settlement under siege from giant fire-breathing ants, or head west into the ruins of DC proper and slaughter armies of super mutants, and these aren't even all the things that you can do, these are just some fun highlights. The exploration is where the game absolutely shines, which of course should be the case for any good open world game. You should be encouraged to travel further to see what else you'll find. As I've said before, too many open world games forget to have any reason to be open world. All they do is add a commute between you and your goal with dick all to find in between. Fallout 3 has around 160 discoverable locations alone, almost every one of them has something interesting about them. My personal favourite locations are the Jury Street metro station because I like how it's laid out as an area, and I like that inside one of the buildings there's this elaborate trap set up by the raiders that could damage you. It just kind of amuses me all of the effort these raiders must have gone through to set this up. It just puts a smile on my face and blows several holes in me. Then you have Tenpenny Tower, where you can help a downtrodden race of ghouls stick it to a bunch of rich do-nothing arseholes, either by telling the rich pricks to sod off or just by taking the fucker over. Then we have Oasis, a shining patch of greenery with a talking tree in the middle of the desert that is called the Capital Wasteland, overseen by a group of tree-obsessed nutters. There's Rivet City, a settlement built aboard a beached aircraft carrier with a great marketplace and some interesting characters to speak with. And of course Old Only, a small town overrun with Deathclaws that is also home to the prototype medic power armor that talks to the player and injects you with painkillers when you take damage. It's brilliant.
Listen up, you goddamn puke. You are now wearing prototype medic power armor. You take care of me, and I'll take care of you. Enemy lead!
Honestly, there are so many more, but if we listed each place I liked, then we'd be here for longer than you or I want or need to be here. My point is, the game has a lot to offer. There is real charm and heart here, which in my opinion manages to shine through the rough exterior. On a technical level, the game might be a broken mess and an utter embarrassment that had it been released by any other company it would have been laughed out the door, but I can't deny when I've had fun. I can't deny when I'm having a good time, and ultimately Fallout 3 is fun and a good time. I understand that I might be biased, of course. Again, I've been a fan of this game pretty much its entire 14-year lifespan, and there is a sense of comfort I feel when I go back into the Capital Wasteland. I just adore this game, and it does make me sad that the functionality issues are a complete turn-off to a lot of people, and of course I can't blame them. As I said earlier, games are meant to be enjoyed, and if a game this shoddily programmed is not something that someone wants to put up with, then yeah, it's completely reasonable. I'd recommend a game, but I won't hold it against you or mock anyone who doesn't want to put up with the bullshit. I encountered numerous bugs, visual fuck-ups, and technical issues in my latest playthrough, from basic frame rate drops drops, to rocks misaligned with the floor, from this car that exploded, but then when I came back to the area it looked like this, with all of the parts just hovering a few inches from the model, as if like this is the model it transitions to after it explodes for that split second, but like there's no momentum and I can't really interact with it. To my alert kings that levitate out of the water, what the fuck were you doing, Your Majesty? It's almost impressive just how much can go wrong in the game. That's not even counting the 3 crashes I had, 2 of them behind loading screens and one of them because I dared to walk a few paces. Although given how out of shape I am, that one's actually true to life. Again, it's a shame because there is so much here that I love. The exploration is great, there are some memorable and interesting characters to meet and some fun quests to do. I haven't even discussed the custom weapons yet, have I? You've got the rocket launcher that allows you to use miscellaneous trash as ammo. Blowing up fools' heads with books and teddy bears is a lot of fun. You've got my beloved swish kebab, because who doesn't love a flaming sword? My favourite detail is the little oven mitt that you use to hold the weapon with. It's a cute detail. You've got the railway rifle that's mostly just a serviceable rifle, but it makes little train sounds, so I love it. The dart gun, which doesn't hit hard, but it ejects poison into its victims and seems to despise enemy legs. A single shot cripples both the legs of an opponent, so when facing things like a Deathclaw, there really is nothing better to slow them down with. It only works on organic targets though, so like don't use it on robots. You've got the Nuka grenade, which is an absolute unit and does what it says on the tin. It's a grenade-sized nuke. I'm very sorry that I missed both of these throws with my grenades. I didn't have enough resources to make new ones, and I kind of fucked it up, so yeah, just imagine those hit my enemies. You've got the bottle cap mine, which is a mine filled with bottle caps. Yeah, this one needs no further explanation. And who can forget the Deathclaw gauntlet, because who doesn't want to be a wasteland Wolverine? I even like the karma system, and I know that moral choices in video games can be really hit or miss, because sometimes they can feel like they're forcing the player to either pick one or the other forever or get a shit ending, but this one's not like that. The plot of the main game ends the same way regardless of what you do, though you can make a choice that can fuck over a bunch of people if you really want to, but the main story will always end with you restarting the water purifier at Project Purity. Your karma will affect how people perceive and talk to you, and if you're too good or too evil, then some groups will just have no time for you, because apparently word gets around the crumbling ruins of civilization fast. But given that you can always turn over a new leaf and just be nice or naughty depending on the situation, you don't feel like you're tied into one specific path. If you are too evil, then you'll have this group, the regulators, come after you and try to gun you down because they hate bastards, which, to be fair, it's an understandable motive, innit? And if you're too good, then talent company mercs will come after you because apparently someone somewhere hates the idea of a goody two-shoes being out there doing nice things and just wants you dead. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really sure how that one works. Like, how did they even get my name? I don't tell my name to anyone at all, but if you find these contracts on their dead bodies, it's got your character's name on it. Not gonna lie though, those talent company mercs carry decent equipment and they ambush you quite regularly, so they're quite handy to be enemies with. The game has a lot going on, it's just a shame that it has the issues that it does. I thought the same of Fallout New Vegas, which is one of my favourite games of all time, in spite of the fact that it's even more shoddily put together. As I said earlier, I recommend the game because it is, at heart, a really good RPG with so much to offer the player. We've got a decent story with clear stakes and interesting characters, it nails its exploration factor with a large map and tons of locations to discover and treasures to find. It's decently balanced, and whilst you might find a minigun early on in the game, good fucking luck finding enough ammo to make it viable long term. And like Fallout New Vegas, the DLC game is strong. One puts you into a simulation of the liberation of Anchorage, Alaska, a big event in Fallout lore if you don't know, and rewards you with a nearly unbreakable suit of power armor and some other cool stuff like an electrified sword and a Gauss rifle. I like this Gauss rifle, it looks cool. One sees you get abducted by aliens and forces you to fight your way through their ship, one has you impersonate a slave to aid in an uprising against raiders who rule over the ruins of Pittsburgh, and one takes you to a haunted swamp in Maryland to do battle with hillbillies and tribals. Full disclosure, this time I only got around to messing with one of the DLCs because the base game has so much to do with it already that I kind of lost track of time. I went to Point Lookout for a bit and got some weapons and did some bits, so yeah. Overall, Fallout 3 is a really good game that manages to be amazing despite the incompetence of the studio developing it. It's still worth playing in my opinion. As I said earlier, I still find new things that are interesting in Fallout 3 over a decade later. It might be rough around the edges, but we're all flawed, aren't we? And we all deserve a chance to prove that we're more than what we first seem. Thank you so much for being here again, my lovelies. If you've played Fallout 3, tell me what your favourite thing about it is in the comments, or maybe just tell me what it is that annoys you about the game. Until next time everyone, take care, I love you all. Bye-bye. Oh, like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon and T-Mill. Okay, bye.